today with, tell us who you are and introduce yourself for us.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, kings and queens, I'm Euwarnii Hughes. I'm the CEO of Great Gale, as well as the author and the illustrator of Afrofuturism manga, Bold Saga, a story that empowers our young kings and queens with the majesty of African culture.
Nice. Tell us where can people pick up your book?
Awesome. So chapter 1 and chapter 2 are both available on Amazon, and you can get the paperback like this, as well as the Kindle version. And if you want the HD Kindle version, you can go to payhip.com/greatgale, GreatGale.
All right. What was your decision to make it into a manga?
Awesome. Well, I have loved manga for most of my life, ever since the first manga that I ever held, which was called One Piece. When I was 8 years old, I couldn't pronounce it, so I used to call it Nepek, because the illustrations, it confused me. But from that point of 8 all the way up until present, I have been in love with manga, to the point that I've been borrowing the How to Draw books from Graphic Shaw and all these other companies. I've maxed out my library card twice with 95 books just to learn how to draw manga. Everything was about learning how to draw it, because I wanted to get into video game design, but I wanted it to be a manga aesthetic, the way how it was drawn. But as I got older, what I noticed is that the people who were creating the manga didn't always look at what black people actually look like, and they put their stereotypes and injected it right into the story. So you can have characters that are supposed to be black, but they're either the comic relief or they look like minstrels and all these type of negative, either overt or subvert type of racist nonsense. So what I wanted to do was change the narrative and give young kings and queens that are black characters that look like them, that are the heroes of their story, all with the manga vibe and everything like that.
All right. How many volumes do you plan on putting out?
That's a very great question. What I love about manga is that it's one straight storyline. So right now we have 2 chapters, but honestly, my goal is for it to go as long as possible. I would love for it to reach at least 1,000 chapters or more, because that's where my current look. I love One Piece, and that's one of my greatest inspirations. One Piece is at 1010 right now, and it's gonna finish in 5 years. So it may end up racking up at like maybe 1,500, and that intellectual property is worth $20 billion. So my goal is to continuously provide content and quality so it reaches the thousands. That's my goal. No, only
Okay.
God knows.
And you're the first person so far ever that we've interviewed that's done a manga.
Nice.
That's awesome. So let's see. Do you kickstart your mangas or do you fund them all yourself?
Presently at this moment, I'm the author and the illustrator. I also self-publish it. So everything I'm doing is in-house right now. What my goal is, by at least chapter 3 or beyond, that's when I plan to do a Kickstarter, so that when the audience gets it, they're getting chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and they can get truly immersed in it. Because, sometimes people, when they see things that are Kickstarter, they don't want to just take a wild stab at something. They want something that already has been developed, something that, the actual market is tested and it's a viable product. So that's my goal. So if it's not before the end of this year, it'll hopefully be by summer. But that date is still scheduled to change, because I'm also a graphic designer. So this is one half of what I do.
All right. Let's see. So tell us what's in the first 2 chapters. Give us a story so far.
Okay, no problem. So, chapter 1 focuses on the adventures of Masego Umnata. He's a meek teen unashamed to follow his dreams of becoming the next Anansi, like his role model, Shaka Zulu. But first he has to overcome tests, trials, and a rite of passage that leads to a supernatural encounter where he finds out what it truly means to be bold. And then when we get to chapter 2, we're continuing the story. After this great event has happened, he's presented with 2 choices, either fight or flight. Which will he choose? And the rite of passage is coming to an end. It's Shawnee versus a new challenger. Can she defeat them? So it's basically all about showing Afrofuturism with manga. But what I love is that it's not just a black character. All of the story is literally wrapped in African culture. They speak African languages in the story, like Xhosa, Khoi, Zulu. They actually do African martial arts like Nguni stick fighting, capoeira. They do, what's the other one? Musangue. All of that. Even when you look at the way how the characters, their clothing is either based on African clothing, the hairstyles, all of that. And even as the African culture of Adinkras, like basically that one right there, Fawohodi, that means independence. So even though you see the illustrations, the Adinkras add another layer of depth to the story that tie into it. So you're getting all of this black excellence that's actually rooted in African culture. Even in chapter 2, when they have like the different food, like shishanyama, and the dances, all of it, it's literally African culture. That's why chapter 1 took 2 years to make, because I actually had to do the research to make sure it's authentic.
Nice. That's awesome. So, do you treat it like a normal manga and keep it black and white, or is it in color?
At this present stage, it's like a normal manga. It is black and white. My goal is that as it gains enough popularity, as it gains enough of an audience, then I will go back and change it to color. Because Dragon Ball Z didn't wait. They waited, in my opinion, until their series was finished, and then they went back and did it in color. My goal right now is to treat it like a manga, do it in black and white, so it can get out to the audience as quickly as possible. Because, once you add color, there's millions of color. Black and white is black, white, and shades of gray. I'd rather give them what they need as quickly as possible.
All right. Do you draw it traditionally, or do you do it digitally?
At this present moment, the inspirations and the sketches are done traditionally, but when it comes to actually creating the entire story, everything is done digitally. Because I wanted it to be done efficiently, and I wanted to use the digital programs that I have to the best of my ability. Since I am one person doing this, I have to use Clip Studio Paint, and that's one of the best drawing programs, period. It's better than Photoshop, in my opinion. It's incredible, the stuff that it has in it. But yes, at this present moment, it's digitally.
All right. How many pages is a manga?
That's a great question. A manga can generally be as long as you want it to be, but your first chapter is usually your longest. The first chapter of a manga, generally when you're dealing with mangas from Shonen Jump, that can be 50 pages, 60, 75. I've seen up to 110 pages for one chapter. Every chapter after that is generally 15 to 21 pages. But for what I'm doing for Bold Saga, the first chapter is at least 37 pages. Every chapter after that is going to be anywhere between 9 to 15, so that it can be done as quickly as possible. Because if every chapter is 30 pages, you're going to be waiting months to years. But if it's like 9 to 10, you can get the story out faster. Because that's the goal, to get the story out so that the audience can see it.
All right. Do you, well, in the perfect world before the current world events, was you going to Comic Cons and things like that?
The first comic convention I went to, it was the Schaumburg Black Comic Book Festival, and I had so much fun there. That's where I got to see like TJ Sterling, Black Sands Entertainment, all of these great titans who are in the indie comic space that are doing their thing. From that point onwards, ever since COVID happened, it's very hard to go in person because, health regulations and all of that. But, every disappointment is a blessing because it's given me opportunities to go to different conventions like the Pop-Up Shop Show. I've been to Virtuous Con. And that just keeps getting better and better. DC backed it last time and Disney was there. So that's going to keep getting bigger and bigger, as well as Afro Comic Con. So those have been the comic conventions I've been to, and there's more than I'm looking forward to.
All right. What state are you in?
Oh, I'm in New York, but I'm originally from Antigua. And that's another thing I wanted to touch on really quickly. Chapter 2 gives Caribbean representation. I know you said I'm one of the first mangas that you've covered, but I don't know, have you ever covered anyone that has art or comics that deal with Caribbean characters or Caribbean representation?
I don't think. I think you're the first, might be the first in that too.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's amazing, man.
Oh, yeah. I mean, thank you for taking the time to come talk with us.
It's a pleasure.
Um, so do you stay in New York to go to different Comic Cons, or do you travel outside of New York?
At this present moment, since the story started, I'm staying in the state of New York to see all the opportunities that are there first, build an audience, and then once that happens and it takes off, go to different states. The good thing about the digital comic conventions is that you can connect with people from all over the world. So that's like one of the blessings right now. So I can be like Afro Comic Con is literally in not Florida, it's in California. But what happens because it's all digital, you can just connect over the internet. So it's a blessing right now that COVID's happening, but it's also, challenges and everything else. So you just have to see the light in the darkness.
All right. Trying to think. I don't know. Is there any indie creators out there that you would like to work with?
Are there any indie creators that I would like to work with at this present moment? That's a very great question. In my opinion, I would want to work with someone who's in the manga space. The irony is that although I do manga, a lot of the people that I know and I look up to in the indie space do American style comics. Black Sands Entertainment is a combination of manga and American comics, but there's TJ Sterling, who did Okemos, Specs, who I know you've interviewed for Legacy of the View. There's Dope Girls Comics. There's Bristol Media Group. These are all people I would like to have my characters intersect with at one point in time. But I would really love if I could find someone in the manga space or that does manga that I could intersect with. Only person I can think of off the top of my head is Jerry from E4 Comics with his manga, The Elements. But that's all I can think of. It's easier to find indie comics that are made by Black people than indie manga. So manga it's a subgenre of the comic spectrum. So.
All right. Are you taking any submissions? If people have stories, can they send them to you? And I guess y'all work together or do a collab, or are you taking any submissions that way?
At the present moment, no, but I think maybe after the Kickstarter, that will be an option. Because at this point in time, I just want to grow what the story is. Because many times when I talk to people, they don't even know what Afrofuturism is. And they really may not know what manga is. Like one of my first reviews for the book, they were like, I like it, but I wish it was in color. The person who gave the review, they're basically coming from that mindset of what an American comic would look like. So I'm just trying to do the groundwork of letting people know this is what the story is and this is what the story is about.
All right.
But I'd be willing to look forward to that once the Kickstarter is done and it's grown.
All right. I guess, yeah, that comes to my next question. Do you want to explain to everybody what a manga is?
Okay. What a manga is, it is Japanese style comics, but it does not have to be done just by Japanese people. I've had this discussion with people online where they have this misconception that just because something is Japanese style comics, it must be made by Japanese people. The way how manga came about actually is Osamu Tezuka, who is the godfather of manga. He was the one that created Astro Boy and other mangas. Back in the past, he was inspired by Disney and by Bambi when he looked at the way how the eyes were drawn, the way how the facial features were drawn. So he liked that, and then he took that style and then merged it with what he knew of Japanese art, and then he created manga based off of that. So if that is the case, and if manga, which is Japanese style comics, was still inspired by American illustrations, then manga can not only be made by Japanese people. It'd be like saying that hip hop can only be made by Black people. And if it's not made by Black people in the Bronx, it can't be classified as hip hop. So manga is Japanese style comics, but it doesn't have to be made by Japanese people. Afrofuturism basically is, as defined by Ytasha Womack, a literary and cultural aesthetic that combines elements of science fiction, historical fiction, fantasy, Afrocentrism, and magical realism with non-Western cosmologies to critique the issue facing the people of color today and to interrogate and examine historical events of the past. So basically what that is Afrofuturism is taking African culture from the past, the present, and the future, merging it into one, but giving their characters agency. So manga, Japanese style comics, with, in my opinion, what separates manga from just your American style comics or other types of comics is emotions. Manga is very emotional. When you look at their eyes, it has a cinematic quality to it from the way how they set up their shots and languages and cultures. Japanese manga, you will always be learning about either samurais, Japanese culture, knights, mythologies, all these types of things. It's not always superheroes. There was even a story where, what is it? The Way of the Household Husband. You can be a golfer. You can be a candy, someone that likes candy. You can be a chef. It's anything you want it to be.
All right. And did you do it? Did you go all the way traditional and do it? I think it's from right to left, the pages.
At this present moment, no. I did it American style. So that's why, even though this is manga, is Afrofuturism manga, because although it's right to left in traditional style Japanese comics, the way how I read books is left to right, and I've been doing that all my life. So my immediate market is for Black people, and unless you like read manga and you know about it, you may, because you like comics, may read from left to right. So for this current setup of Bold Saga, I'm going left to right.
All right. Well, I guess, is there anything you want to say to everybody before we go?
One last thing I wanted to let everybody know is that although Bold Saga is at 2 chapters, one major change that has happened is, have you ever heard of Black Sands Entertainment?
I haven't.
No problem. Well, what Black Sands Entertainment is, they're the #1 indie Black publisher in the nation. And what I have had the opportunity to do is, while I was creating Bold Saga, I took their course, the 90-Day Book Challenge, and it helped me get the story, to a better state, because I'm more of an artist. But that helped me get the story more cohesively. I applied, and I want to let everybody know that their app is coming out on May 1st, and Bold Saga is also going to be added to that. And why that's so significant is that this is a company that's raised millions of dollars for Black creative entertainment. They have an anime coming out. They have sold hundreds of thousands of copies. So for them to see the value of a story that just started, it's just an honor to be a part of it.
All right. Really quick, what is the 90-day book challenge?
Okay, what the 90-Day Book Challenge is, it was a course by Black Sands Entertainment, and it's free. It's still on YouTube, actually. If you go to their channel, you can find it. And it goes over basically how to get started in creating a comic, from knowing your log lines to making your story to a specific book that can help you get it all done, even into the marketing of your book. So I would recommend that challenge to anybody that wants to create a comic, but don't be dismayed if you don't get it done in 90 days. Because I failed the 90-Day Book Challenge. I'm going to keep it 100% honest with you. I took 2 years, but the quality was worth it. So it depends on what stage you're going for, but I recommend that challenge. It's fun.
All right. And where can people get your book?
You
One
can
last time before we go?
No problem. You can find Bold Saga Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. They're both available on Amazon.com. And if you just type in Bold Saga on Amazon, it'll pop up. And if you go to PayHip, you can find the HD, which is higher quality version of the ebooks. And that's payhip.com/Great Gale. And if you want to connect or follow our story, you can easily find us at Instagram.com or at Great Gale Co. So GreatGaleco.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a blessed day.